Mr. Davis is being grilled by the Commons Committee on Exiting Europe. Committee Chairman, former Labour frontbencher Hilary Benn, asked him what would happen if the government was defeated in a vote over its plans to leave the customs union, an amendment pushed forward by the House of Lords this week. Mr. Davis said, "I'm not going to enter into hypotheticals. I expect the government's policy to be upheld." He insisted the government would stand by its policy of leaving the customs union even if MPs vote against it. He said, "The government always respects Parliament, but I expect the government's position to be upheld." Mr. Davis brushed off claims that Brussels has rejected one of Britain's proposed solutions on customs, a form of customs partnership. Sky News' David Davis is giving evidence to the Commons Committee on Exiting Europe, said it is early in the negotiations on this, and the EU's stance is an opening position. Conservative former Cabinet Minister Stephen Crabb asked Mr. Davis what was motivating his view of the customs union. He said, "Do you think there are game-changing opportunities from being able to sign trade deals outside the EU? Or is it about being free symbolically?" Mr. Davis replied there were more opportunities for trade growth outside the EU. The session got off to a frosty start when Mr. Benn said Mr. Davis' claim he only had 90 minutes as he had an important meeting to attend was not satisfactory. After the awkward start, the committee chairman, former Labour frontbencher Mr. Benn, asked Mr. Davis how long MPs would have to consider the withdrawal agreement before the meaningful vote. Mr. Davis said he did not know but wanted to let Parliament vote on it before the European Parliament votes on it. He said all the elements of the negotiation will have been revealed to MPs way before the vote, all except the very last bit. The Brexit secretary said there will be a statement to MPs and the vote would take place not too long after that. Mr. Davis pledged MPs will know most of the details of withdrawal agreement long before deal is agreed and said they would receive an economic assessment. Parliament Live. David Davis answers questions from the Brexit committee. Mr. Davis confirmed MPs will be able to table amendments to the meaningful vote motion approving Brexit withdrawal agreement, and joked with Mr. Benn that he did not know how to put forward an unamendable motion, but was happy to take lessons. He insisted the government planned to take any amendments seriously, saying it would not have a vote if it were not going to take it seriously. The Brexit secretary said the government wanted to conclude negotiating a trade treaty with EU before March 2019 and did not accept suggestions that talks would continue into the transition period. He said there were 6 months between the withdrawal agreement being agreed and Brexit, and it was not the government's intention to allow the trade negotiations to spill over into the transition. Mr. Davis said he wanted the political agreement on trade in the autumn to be very detailed and expected it to be turned into a treaty within 6 months and concluded before March 2019. Getty. David Davis arrives for the Brexit committee session. Labour MP Pat McFadden asked what the government would do if Parliament voted down the resolution approving the Brexit agreement. Mr. Davis replied that the government would not normally explain what it will do if it loses a vote, but agreed he expected Britain would lead the UK without a deal in the event of such a result. When asked if the resolution was amended to call for an extension of the Article 50 process, Mr. Davis suggested that would require all remaining 27 EU states to agree. He said, "The rules are clear, with unanimity, it can be extended. But it may be impossible. And if Parliament asks for something impossible, then obviously we can't deliver on that." Parliament Live. Jacob Rees-Mogg quizzes David Davis at the Brexit committee session. Senior Tory Brexiteer Jacob Rees-Mogg asked how the UK will be allowed to negotiate trade deals during the transition period. Mr. Davis said an agreement now allows the UK to negotiate and sign trade deals during the transition but not implement them. He said he wants the UK to be able to get off to a racing start in negotiating these deals during the transition and hoped the first post-Brexit trade deals will come into force day after transition ends. Mr. Rees-Mogg asked him, "Is there a risk the UK might have to stay in the customs union because new customs arrangements will not be ready by the end of 2020 when the transition is over?" Mr. Davis said no and suggested there was a bigger risk on the other side, because some countries might not have customs arrangements in place in time. He said he did not expect membership of the customs union to be extended and would regard such an outcome as a failure.